So, I want to talk about how you create your characters for your novels. I want to start by saying the goal is to get a character that feels like a real person, a consistent, real person, and preferably one that changes in some positive way from the beginning to the end of the novel. Before you start really plotting your novel and writing down, what scenes you want in your outline, I think it's really important to create your characters. Whether it's a first person or a third person novel, really, because it's the character's personality and goals that will drive each scene forward. So it's really important to think about it this way. A plot isn't just random stuff happening and you throw characters in there. If you do that, your characters won't fit and they won't be consistent and they'll be making decisions that they wouldn't make. So it's really important to get that consistency. And that comes with understanding who your character is. Now, what's most important with your characters is their personality, because then that colors how they'll speak and it influences their decisions that will drive the plot. And that goes along with their goals. Their personality will help shape their goals of what they would want. I know that some people recommend, and there's these character sheets that are super detailed about your favorite color and a pet you had when you were a kid and different things like that. Now, a few superfluous details are fun to throw into the novel, but you can really put that in afterwards because they're not contingent on that character's personality. Like the fact that I like blue doesn't have anything to do really with my personality. I could easily like purple or orange. So rather than going through every detail on one of those character sheets, I recommend focusing on the most important things. So that is their personality and their backstory, which need to be tied together. So the backstory is what shapes their personality, and this is how it happens in real life. When we're kids, we experience certain things, and that shapes our personalities. So you could come up with a personality and then figure out the backstory that would create that personality, or you can come up with the backstory and figure out what personality would come from that. But it takes a lot of deep thought. So this is the first step. You're thinking of your novel. You can have general ideas of how you want the plot to be and themes and things like that. But before you get too involved in the plot, figure out your characters' personalities. Now, as far as personality goes, that's things like, someone is needy, they're positive, they're caring, they get angry, things that make someone up. And one way to start doing this is you look at people you know or friends and you try to figure out what their personality is. That can give you ideas of how to create some different personalities. You don't want to just copy people, but you can combine aspects of people because that's all personalities are anyway. So in that personality that you create, you want some positives and some negatives. Now, depending on your character, if you're creating an anti-hero, then they're going to have a lot more negatives and maybe all negatives. But people still will like those characters because they'll have goals, and those goals are what get people into the novel partly. Although some people might not like them specifically. I know there's this one novel called Prince of Thorns, and the character is basically a sociopath, correctly termed antisocial personality disorder. um, and that turns off some people. So you got to be careful with creating anti-heroes, although I find it to be interesting, but other people don't necessarily like it. So it's these character traits that you create, and create a few, maybe 2 positive, 2 negative, 3 maybe, maybe 1 negative, 3 positive, but not too many that they get jumbled up in your mind. Because it's these traits that then will drive the plot. So if you're an angry person, you should make things happen in some scenes where that anger leads to something bad. It can also lead to something good, like if it convinces you to address a problem with somebody, then there are good aspects of bad personality traits. So you want your plot to flow as an extension from their personality. It just makes it a lot more interesting. And from their goals. Your character, every scene, or every active scene where your character is involved in something, you need to have a goal. And in the other scenes where they explore what happened in that scene, you don't. But I'll talk more about that when you're writing plot. But essentially, your character needs to have an overall goal for the novel, and then goals for the scenes as well. Now, another important part of writing your characters is to have consistency with their dialogue. Now, this can be a challenge, for sure. Now, writing dialogue, and I'll go more into this when I talk about dialogue, but you want differences in your characters. So some easy ways to do it are give them a few different words that they say, or expressions. But largely the differences will be based on their interests, which you need to create. So if someone's a poker player, and then they'll frame their speech in terms of that. Now, you don't want to make it so people only have one interest and they talk about just that one interest, but a couple is fine, and you want to bring it up in different ways. But that consistency in the speech, like, they're framing their speech based on their interests and their personality, then it's interesting. So what I recommend is you write down the key things of your characters. So that's their personality, traits, positive and negative, their goals, and a little bit about their background, and their speech and how you want to get that across, in a few words. And you put all of your main characters at the top of, or in a Word document, and make sure you review that before you write each scene. If you don't, your characters won't be as consistent, and then they won't seem as real. Like maybe their emotions will be wrong in the scene, or their interests, you won't even touch on it, or things like that. So if you review it before the scene and you think, this person would think this and do this. This person would think this and do this. And then you get that consistency by doing that. Establishing a character, primarily you'll want to show their personality in their decisions and goals, and in other ways when they're interacting with people, rather than just say, this person is angry, because that doesn't have that much of an effect. Now, that being said, though, you can sometimes you want to tell things a certain percentage of the time, maybe 20% or 15, I don't know. But if you state a personality trait and then you show it a couple times, that really ingrains it in someone's mind. And for less astute readers, they might not, maybe they wouldn't pick up on it as much, but it is okay to tell a little bit. But you just want to do it in ways where it's more subtle, and primarily you want to show the personality traits. All right, now character arcs, finally. So now that you have these well-rounded characters that are consistent with different speech, personalities, goals, backstories, you can come up with your character arc, and there are several types. One of the least common, or I guess the least common, would be a falling character arc or a negative character arc. So this is where somebody has a better personality trait, and by the end of the novel they have a bad one, like maybe they're generous at first, but by the end they're selfish. This is a good arc for a tragedy, or well, pretty much a tragedy, or if you want. You can also do this to a degree, like if you start good, then they have a negative character arc halfway through, and they fall apart, and then you could redeem them from in a positive arc, which, I like that as well. But the goal is you pick a trait or a belief, and you gradually and realistically change it throughout the course of the novel, through exposing that character to different circumstances, experiences, ideas from other people, until they really become a new person. And if it seems natural, then it's awesome. There's a flat character arc, which it's essentially like having no character arc, meaning your character is static, their personality. Now this can be still a perfectly well-rounded, three-dimensional, believable, consistent character, but they're not having any fundamental changes in their beliefs or personality traits or things like that. And they, but they do and should have doubts about their decisions and ideas. So let's say someone's super confident, which is essentially what I'm doing in the novel I'm writing now, A Hacker's Dream. So I have one character that's believes in himself no matter what, and because of that, it's more like he shapes the world around him than things are shaping him. So it's a strong character that thinks they have sort of the right combination of things as it is. And to make that interesting, you have them doubt it, and you have them question at times, but ultimately, they stay strong in that personality trait. But primarily, you should use the growth model for character arcs. So growth is they change a belief to something more positive. One of their flaws is changed, so it's no longer a flaw. Or in the hero's character arc, they become almost an entirely new person by the end. In the beginning, they're normal, and by the end, they're an amazing hero. So those are the different character arcs. It's really important to integrate this. You should integrate it while you're planning your novel. And if you have a consistent three-dimensional character before you plot, then your plot will be a lot better because it'll make sense and be tied to the characters. So when I first started writing, I was like, create awesome plots, and then I was trying to fit characters in, and that can be hard. So that's why, in my opinion, that's the order. And just because you focus on your characters doesn't mean you can't have an awesome plot, because you can. And I recommend trying to do both. So that's how to create good, consistent, believable characters. Good luck.